Hello, everybody. Welcome to Student-Driven Classrooms. We had 7 tips for being reckless and not reckless, for getting students to drive their own learning, but we have decided that since you're taking a little time on a summer afternoon, that we would give you a couple of extra bonus tips. So we got 10 tips, practical strategies that hopefully you can put into practice in your classroom right away to really help your students own their own learning, get behind the wheel, and drive their instruction in your classroom. So we are going to cover a couple of FAQs right away at the beginning. First of all, if you are interested in a recording, if you just want to see more of my smiling face or want to review anything that we go over today, that will be emailed out to you, and it will also be available probably by about tomorrow on vaei.vai.org. Also, there's going to be a lot of content today, all sorts of resources that are going to be available. We have put together a handy hyperdoc for you. You can find that in the handouts tab through GoToWebinar. And again, that's also going to be emailed out to you. So you don't need to feel like you need to take notes frantically today. We're going to be moving fast, giving you an introduction to a lot of different strategies and ideas. And all of those will be sent right out to you. You can access those, get a sneak preview through that handouts tab right now. So we've got recordings, we've got resources. We also have Robin. Robin, would you like to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everybody.
Robin. Robin's going to be helping out with any questions that you might have. If you have technical issues or logistic issues, just go ahead and enter those into the chat box, and Robin will be happy to help you out. If there are any content questions, again, keep an eye out for that email that comes after we're done with our time today. I can address any content-related questions, great sort of tangents that you want to run off on. I'm more than happy to dive into those in that follow-up email. Robin is also going to be helping us out with our polls today, and we have a practice poll to get started here today. It's just a who's here. I'm interested in what grade of students you teach. As we work together, you'll notice that all the strategies that we're incorporating, they're fairly flexible. They can be used with younger students, they can be used with older students. Obviously, some of them are going to be geared a little bit more toward one or the other. I just want to give you the freedom, give you the liberty to pick and choose from amongst all of the different ideas that we discuss. Find the ones that you think are going to be the most relevant for you and for your students. You're professional, you know best. We just want to hopefully get your creative juices flowing, expose you to some different ideas, and then let you fly from there. So Robin, hopefully they've had an opportunity to enter what grade of students they teach. Could you go ahead and close that poll up, share the results out, and could you tell us what we're seeing so far?
Sure. So it looks like we have 3% lower elementary. So K2, we have 69%. So that's going to be our biggest chunk, 3.5. 21% middle school, 6.8, and then we have 12% high school, and then 3% is other or admin level.
Outstanding, excellent. So some good diversity there, especially those K through 8 teachers. You're going to want to pay close attention to our sponsor today. That's Blue Apple Projects. Blue Apple Projects, I really can't recommend highly enough Blue Apple Projects. They're really interesting learning experiences for your students. They teach rich content through relevant projects where students are empowered to make a difference in their communities and in the world. So all these projects are really engaging, they're really empowering, and they're really supportive. They come with project plans and supplies. They do all the heavy lifting so that you can do what you do best, which is teach. The website up there, blueappleteacher.org, check it out. There is a discount code just because you're here at this webinar, webinar 20. If you want to pass that along to your administrator, see if they will set you up with a Blue Apple project. So now that the shameless sponsor plug is out of the way, let's talk about the agenda for the day. Before the rubber hits the road here, let's kind of figure out what that path is going to look like. We're going to start off talking about why student-driven classrooms are such a big deal. Then we're going to explore what it looks like when we have a student-driven classroom. And last, in that how section, we're going to talk about the nitty-gritty specifics, the nuts and bolts, the strategies that you can use to make it happen in your classroom. Again, we're going to give you a really powerful frame for deciding which strategies to use in which situations. So hopefully you find this useful, applicable, helpful, something that you can put into practice right away this fall. Let's start with why. Now, for me, the importance of student-driven classrooms was really driven home during the pandemic. This is my daughter right here, Violet, and she's a good student, but she came down, along with a lot of other students, I think, with a serious case of pandemicitis, the symptoms of which are lethargy and irritability and extreme distractibility. A lot of us discovered that once our students left our classroom, when they were at home and they were away from those external, extrinsic tools that we use to motivate students, those rewards and those punishments, that for a lot of them, they struggled. And it really drove home the importance of developing and cultivating intrinsic motivation. We know that students aren't always going to be with us. They're going to have to leave us eventually. And so it's one thing to be able to get them to do what they're supposed to learn the way they're supposed to when they're right there, but we want to prepare them to live curious, creative lives. That's what we really want for all of our students. And so to me, the importance of helping students drive their own learning was driven home by this whole remote learning world. Even when we're back in the classroom, it's still important for us to pay close attention when we're in person to the idea of student drive, to getting them behind the wheel and letting them take ownership of their own learning. There are a lot of different moving parts in your classroom, just like there are a lot of different moving cars on a highway. Each student is starting in a unique location and they're going to a unique location. And if we want to try and put the hand on the wheel of all of those different students at the same time, we just don't have enough hands to do it well all the time. It's a recipe for getting stressed out, for getting burned out. Now, that can be nerve-wracking. If you're like me, the idea of taking your hand off the wheel, of giving up some of that control, can really be kind of freaky. We're concerned that if we do that, it's going to degenerate into this kind of Mad Max Fury Road, anarchic Thunderdome situation. And so we fall back on what makes us feel secure, what makes us feel comfortable. We want to impose those external strictures and make sure everything happens in a way that we can control. And the only thing we have to worry about then is the posture of that kid in the third row. But we know, deep down, we know that that's not the best thing for our students. We know that they're going to leave us. They're going to go out into the world. And if we want to prepare them to lead fully flourishing human lives, well, we've got to develop that intrinsic motivation. We've got to teach them to drive their own learning. And as an added bonus, if you're able to do that, if you're able to get students to step behind the wheel and drive their own learning, it makes your life a whole lot easier. So I hope that you agree. Student-driven classrooms, it's an important thing. It's kind of a big deal. So what does it look like? What does it mean when we talk about having a student-driven classroom? Here's the big idea. If we want students to drive our classrooms, we must discover what drives our students. Having motivated students who care about their learning is at the heart of being able to have a student-driven classroom. So the strategies that we discussed today are going to be oriented with that objective in mind. Now, in order to talk about it, in order to frame that conversation, I'm going to connect it with something that you might have heard of before. You might have seen the 5 love languages before, different ways that people express affection and receive affection, popularized by Gary Chapman. This has helped a lot of couples and just a lot of people who have to interact with each other. If you, for example, speak the love language of gifts, then you express your affection by giving gifts to others. And you feel valued, you feel cared about when people give gifts to you. If your partner speaks the love language of words, then they're going to be speaking their affection. You might miscommunicate because you're speaking a different language. Now, the same idea is applicable when it comes to motivation, to student motivation in the classroom, and just to human motivation in general. It's helpful for us to think about drive languages, different motivations that drive us. There are 4 big drive languages that students can speak, that humans can speak. They're relatedness, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So we're going to explore each of those in a little bit more detail, and then we're going to talk about specific strategies which speak to students who speak those languages. So first of all, relatedness. People who speak the language of relatedness, they want to belong. They want to know how they can be part of a group, how they fit in, what role they have to play. I'm thinking of a student who I had named Kendall. And Kendall's very sociable, very gregarious, always interested in kind of what other people were thinking and how other people were feeling, especially how they were feeling about her. I remember one time when she was talking with another student about how she liked the Junie B. Jones series, and the other student sort of dismissively said, "Nah, they're so stupid." And she sort of immediately agreed with that. Yeah, they're so dumb. I agree. Um, you'll never get that from the next group, the people who are motivated by autonomy. But for people who are relatedness, who are into relatedness, who speak that drive language, establishing that connection, preserving that relationship is the key thing. A quote that might resonate with people who speak the drive language of relatedness is, "They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." That quote actually came from Teddy Roosevelt. And I've heard it said in education circles for a long time. And whenever somebody says it, somebody always objects. They say, "You know what? There's a teacher who I learned a lot from, and I loved their class, but I don't know if they cared about me." Those people with that perspective, don't emphasize that drive language of relatedness. People are all motivated by all four of these things, but for some of us, one of them predominates over the others. And so identifying which of those drive languages is primary is really important. So if this saying resonates with you, if that's sort of your motto, then you probably speak the language of relatedness, like Kendall. There's also the language of autonomy. People who speak the language of autonomy care a lot about freedom. Nothing motivates them like having choice. When they're able to have the liberty to explore things in their own way, they really thrive. High school students named Akari, who I came into contact with, very creative, definitely spoke the language of autonomy. She's a nonconformist. If everybody was really liked the cafeteria food, she would find ways to criticize it. If they were criticizing it, she'd find things that were positive about it. These people are always interested in going their own way, doing their own thing. They really value freedom and choice. A quote that might resonate with somebody who speaks the language of autonomy is that Henry David Thoreau quote, "Go confidently in the direction of your dreams, live the life you've imagined." If that idea of just pursuing your dreams and doing your own thing and breaking free from the mold really resonates with you, then you are speaking the language, the drive language of autonomy. Now, when we think about the language of mastery, we think about people who are really goal-oriented. They love to achieve. They love to know what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, and they love to go out and do it. You can be really hard workers. You can be really successful in traditional classrooms. A lot of our classes are set up for students to experience mastery. When we talk about I can statements and learning targets, we're speaking to students who speak that language of mastery. This is Jamal, one of my students from second grade, who is extremely motivated by accelerated reader, right? This idea that, oh, I can read books, understand them, answer questions, earn points. Well, that was his drive language. So he just took off as soon as he got into accelerated reader. Now that he's a little bit older, really thriving with Khan Academy. These students just like to know what it means to do a job well and then to go out there and do it. If that describes you, then you really resonate with the drive language of mastery. I've got a quote there. It's actually a quote from John Updike, but it's about the famous baseball player, Ted Williams. And people were wondering why, in a kind of a meaningless end of the season game, he was so particular about the way that he did things. And Updike concluded that the thing that mattered to him was doing the job well. The only thing at stake in those situations was just that little difference between doing the thing right and doing the thing wrong. If that's the kind of person that you are, then you're speaking the drive language of mastery. And last, we have the drive language of purpose. These people are idealists. If relatedness is all about being part of a group, these people want to be part of a cause, something bigger than themselves. I had a student named Carter, who I was teaching back when the Syrian civil war was just getting started. He found out about how Bashar al-Assad was persecuting his own people, and that just drove him crazy. He couldn't tolerate it. So writing letters every night, bringing them in to send them off to different people who might be able to do something about this. Those people who connect with ideals that are bigger than themselves, they're speaking the drive language of purpose. A great quote from William Penn that resonates with people who speak that drive language: right is right, even if everyone is against it, and wrong is wrong, even if everyone is for it. And if that really inspires you, if that makes you feel motivated, then you're speaking the drive language of purpose. So we've gone over those different drive languages, and I'm kind of curious, Robin, if you could open that poll up, which of those do you think resonates with you? As you finish, as you make your selection, I'd like to talk about how it's important for us to recognize what our drive language is, because that can help us identify biases in how we might operate in the classroom. We tend to empathize with people who have a similar language to ourselves. And so we might, if we're motivated by mastery, be putting all sorts of practices into the classroom that speak that language, that motivate by speaking to mastery. And we wonder why students don't resonate with those. We wonder why students aren't responding. So being aware of our drive languages really helps us be intentional about reaching out to those students who are different than we are. Robin, if we could close those in the next 5 seconds or so. And I'm kind of curious, what sort of drive languages are we seeing from our participants out there in teacher land today?
Sure. So it looks like mastery takes the cake at 40%. And then we have 28 for purpose, 18% for relatedness, and 14% for autonomy.
Interesting. Mastery happens to be my primary drive language, but autonomy is my second one. So it just kind of goes to show how people are different, how people are diverse, and how we need to be aware of that in our classroom. Being aware of the drive languages of your students is a really powerful tool that you can use to help connect with them. But we need to think about how exactly we're going to do that. Here's the meat of our time together today. If we understand the drive languages of our students, what do we do about that? What does that process look like? So, simple two-step process. First, identify what drives your students, and then address their drive languages. Put specific strategies into place to motivate them. If you're looking to identify the drive language of your students, the simplest way is just to ask them. So in your resource document, in your HyperDoc that's going to be emailed out, and it's also available in the handouts tab, there is a questionnaire, an interest inventory, where we give different situations, and then we ask students how much those situations would motivate or excite them. At the end, you're able to process that information and figure out which of your students responds really strongly to which of the different drive languages. So we hope that you find that tool valuable. You can take it yourself, you can give it to your students, and then you can put those results to work for you, because it helps you understand your students more deeply. You can also test a hypothesis. If you can't give out that inventory for one reason or another, you know your students pretty well. You're a professional educator, and so you can make a pretty good guess as to what their drive language might be. Once you have that guess, then you can start implementing some strategies which address that language really specifically. If it works, then great, you found their drive language and you're motivating and driving that student. They're going to be excited to drive their own education. If it doesn't work, then you can move to a different hypothesis. When teachers are thinking and acting like scientists and investigating what works and what doesn't work, everybody benefits. So hopefully this gives you a framework for creating and testing hypotheses about student motivation. So once you've identified what drives your students, either just by asking them or by testing hypotheses until you figure out what works, then it is time to implement some specific strategies. These strategies are going to be specific to each of those drive languages. Now, we understand if you are a high school teacher and you see 271,000 students every day, you're not going to be able to do this for every kid. But you might want to zero in on some of those students who maybe struggle with motivation, the ones who are the most interesting to you as far as discovering what makes them tick, what drives them. You focus in on specific students. You could also look at your whole class as a group. You could say, you know, I'm dealing with these 271,000 students, but 200,000 of them are motivated by autonomy. Well, you might want to shift the way that you design your motivational strategies then. Or if you're able to, you can definitely come up with a plan where you hone in on each student individually and you design specific interventions based on what their drive language is. Again, we know that you're in a lot of different situations, and we want to be respectful of the fact that you can take some of these, you can take all of these, you can do with them whatever you want, whatever is going to work for your kids in your class. We want to give you tools that you can use to improve your instruction in the classroom. Also, All of these strategies are going to be strategies that you can use whether we're in person, whether we're remote, or whether we have some sort of weird hybrid situation going on. With very minor modifications, all of these strategies are going to be strategies that you can use in any learning environment as well. So let's talk about how to motivate those kids who are really driven by relatedness. The first one is kind of content oriented. It's the jigsaw strategy. Here, you let students develop a specialized expertise, and then you bring groups together where all together the group's expertises coalesce so they can solve a problem together. If you're learning about a country, for example, one student might be an expert in its geography, one might be an expert in its political systems, one might be an expert in its economy. And when they come together, everybody has a role to play. And that's the key when it comes to speaking the language of relatedness. Those students love to know that they have a role to play. And they know that they're a valued member of a group, then they're going to be more motivated to engage. Another great strategy for helping students connect, for helping students relate to each other, is connected conversations. In this strategy, and again, all of these strategies are explained in more detail in the hyperdoc that you have available to you. But in connected conversations, you help form bridges between ideas and between students' minds. Whenever anybody speaks, they start with a sentence stem. I understand blank. And then they express something that they took away from the previous speaker, something they understood about the previous speaker's ideas. Then they say, and, to elaborate on that idea, or they say, but, to go in a different direction, to kind of contradict or add nuance to that idea. So the first sentence starts with I understand, the second one starts with and or but. And again, this connects to the idea of relatedness because you're just helping students understand the way in which their ideas matter. When students always have to value by saying, I understand this, then those students feel that value, that relatedness, that sense of belonging, and they're more motivated because of it. The last strategy here is my favorite. It's called open their gifts. I'm gonna give you a personal example here. I am the world's worst artist. And so my bulletin boards were always by far the ugliest in the entire school. But if you sit a student down, you look through the class and say, this student has a real talent for art. And then you pull them aside sometimes, say, I need to talk with you for a minute, just you and me. And you say, I've noticed that you're an incredible artist. And I really appreciate and value that, and I need your help. And then you let that student use their gift to help the class in a way that you really care about as a teacher. Well, if this student is not getting a lot of that already, you can change their life that way. This is my gold star strategy here. I love this idea. And so we've built a resource for you to give you ideas about how to use student gifts. Again, this is available in that handy hyperdoc. Again, it's something you can use in person or that you could use in a virtual world. And it gives you an opportunity to write down your students' names on the left side and then select from 10 of the most common gifts that students might have that are applicable in a classroom. Things like a sense of humor or organizational skills or kindness or a gift with persuasion. And then it gives you some ideas about how you might use those gifts in your class. So again, make sure you check that out in the handy hyperdoc, and don't feel like you have to be restrained by those suggestions, but just to get your ideas flowing. The big idea here is you want to help those students understand that you value and can use their gifts. So those are 3 strategies that are related to relatedness. Now, for students who speak the language of autonomy, you're gonna need to go in a little bit different direction. One great strategy is flavors of choice. We can't give students complete freedom, but this helps us think about ways in which we can provide choice. We can allow them to choose the content, the questions they use to address that content, they investigate within that topic, the process that they use to construct their understanding, the product, the end outcome of their investigation, and the way in which they evaluate whether or not it's any good. When you have an assignment or a task or a project, you can look at this and say, which one of these, or which 2 of these, or maybe even which 3 of these, can I give students some choice in? If you want to provide more choice, you can give more choice in each of these. If you want to provide a little bit less choice, if students need more support, you can do it in maybe 1 or 2 of those. So just thinking about those different domains is a way for you to frame and think about ways you can open up space for your students to have some freedom. Another great strategy is starting with the end. Here, instead of telling students how you want them to solve a certain problem or deal with a certain cognitive task. You say what the end goal is, and then you let them discover the pathway toward it. It's a really great way to activate their sense of inquiry, and students who speak the language of autonomy eat this up. They love having the freedom to sort of develop their own understandings. Choice boards are another great way to speak the language of autonomy. Again, you can provide some support, some scaffolds here. They still have to stick with the things which are on the board, but they have some options now. So you can come up with a bunch of different ways that they can express their understanding or work on developing their understanding, and then let them choose their own straight line pathway through that. Opening up that choice is something that they really value. For students who speak the language of mastery, the idea of SMART goals can be really valuable. Specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and timely goals. Those students love those goal setting meetings. Goal setting for individual students, it works for those kids who speak the language of mastery. So again, you can check out that in more detail in that handy hyperdoc. Stars and steps is another great strategy that you can use. If you kind of think of a learning continuum where you have some more foundational, fundamental skills down here, and then some more esoteric, high-level skills over here, just tell students, when you demonstrate a mastery of skill 1, we're going to give you a star, you can go on to skill 2. Give you a star and go on to skill 3. That idea just really is deeply motivating to students who love that feeling of accomplishment, achievement, and mastery. So stars and steps, another great strategy. And those students who love mastery, they love the idea of being able to level up, being able to do some gamification, right? When you incorporate badges and things of that nature into your classroom, those students love it. They love to know that they are achieving. And so gamifying your instruction can be really deeply motivating to those students who love mastery. And last but certainly not least, we have those students who are motivated by purpose, who speak the drive language of purpose. The only strategy that I have in this domain is PBL, because it's so powerful. Those purpose students always want to know, why are we learning this? And PBL is probably the best way for you to answer that question. In project-based learning, students use what they learn, they use their content in order to accomplish an authentic objective. So, for example, they might be learning about biographies and American history so that they can write a biography of a new senior citizen who they just met and share that biography as a keepsake, as a memento with their new friend. That kind of experience, it's really richly rewarding to that sense of purpose. It helps them contextualize and understand why what they're learning applies to the rest of the world. And I mentioned at the top of the hour that we're sponsored by Blue Apple Projects. Blue Apple Projects take this one step further. Their MO is to come up with, or is to do project-based learning with a purpose, right? So every project is oriented around doing something good in the world, having a positive impact on the community or on the broader society. So that is an outstanding way to really tap into that sense of purpose. Now, PBL is also really powerful because it does motivate students who are into relatedness. You have a lot of collaborative group experiences in PBL. So it does speak that drive language as well. The students who are interested in autonomy, PBL features lots of open-ended challenges. And so they have that freedom to answer the questions their own way. The students who are motivated by mastery, who speak that drive language of mastery, well, there's nothing that makes you feel like you've done something successful more than saying, I've impacted 50 lives, or we've raised $500 for this cause that we care about. So PBL speaks all of those drive languages really well, especially when your projects are projects with a purpose. It's also important when we think about student-driven classrooms, we think about what we're trying to get them to drive toward. Eventually, we want all our students to be able to make a positive difference in the world. If we can motivate them so that they can finish a worksheet or read the chapter and answer the questions, I don't think we've done our students a great service. But if we can motivate them, if we can get them to drive their learning so that they can do something valuable, I think we've done them an incredible service. We've helped them live lives that are creative and full of curiosity, that are fully flourishing. So I'm curious, we've covered 10 strategies. We're gonna go over them 5 at a time. Robin, could you open that poll up? I'm just curious which of those strategies you found useful, that you think you might be able to put into practice. You can pick more than one, that is certainly fine. But jigsaw, bring those different specialists together, connected conversation using those sentence stems, open their gifts, finding ways to use their talents in the class, flavors of choice, thinking about different ways you can incorporate autonomy into a task, or start with the end, letting them develop their own, construct their own understanding. Around about 5 more seconds, they can pick the ones they would like. And then if you could share that out, what do we see from our poll results there?
Sure. So it looks like open their gifts is at 71%. So that is the leader. And then right behind that is flavors of choice at 56%. And then we have jigsaw at 44%. And then connected conversations and start with an end are at 38 and 37%. So really close tie at the end there.
All right, we are running low on time, so we're going to jump into the next one. While you put in your choices here, I will point out at the very end of our time today, we will tell you how to win one of those Blue Apple projects for free. We're going to give away 1 free Blue Apple project, so stick around for just a moment. Thank you very much for spending just a couple extra minutes as we find out what you really found valuable today, and then talk about maybe continuing this conversation, developing a community where we continue this discussion about how to really cultivate student-driven classrooms. So we've got those 5 strategies up there. Robin, maybe 5 more seconds to let them choose which of those strategies they really think are going to be relevant and powerful. And then if you could share those results and tell us what we're looking at.
Sure. So the winner here is choice boards at 52%, or no, sorry, project-based learning at 72%, and then followed by choice boards at 52%, and then level up at 41%. And then again, the last 2 are within 1% of each other. The SMART goal setting and stars and steps are at 28 and 29%.
Outstanding. So I think our overall winner there was PBL, which this really resonates with me. I find that to be so incredibly powerful. So we've traveled a long way in the last half hour talking about why student-driven classrooms are so important, what those 4 drive languages are, and then how we can use them to help students take ownership, to get behind the wheel and drive their own instruction. We even talked about how to use PBL, especially Blue Apple PBL, to accomplish that. If you would like to continue this conversation, if you'd like to explore this topic or just about any other topic, there's nothing more that we like at VAEI more than helping teachers out. So we would love to be referred to your administrator. We'd love to come to your school and continue a conversation about really anything that your school needs. We've got Flex PD to offer, where we have a whole suite of different options available so we can customize it for the needs of your school specifically. Also like to invite you to next month's webinar, Beyond One Size Fits All, Key Ways to Differentiate. That's going to be August 19. And again, we'll send you a link in the email and then in that resource document as well. And now the very last slide, how to win 1 free Blue Apple project. All you have to do is continue the conversation. I love interacting with teachers, getting to know them, getting to know what you're doing in your classroom. So I would love if you could share out another strategy that speaks to one of those drive languages. Tell me which drive language you think it speaks to. We can add those to the hyperdocs. The document gets richer over time. Or share a story from your classroom. I love to hear what's going on. So some story that connects with the idea of motivating students, helping them to uncover the things that really drive them. So we have reached the end of our time today. I hope to hear from a lot of you. I'd just like to thank you for taking some of your summer afternoon to think about this topic. And especially, I'd like to thank you for all of the incredible stuff that you do in your classroom to improve the lives of your students. It matters. Thank you.